Thank you. Let's check in with Katina now, who has another question here, I believe.
We do, and it comes from Marguerite Beeman. She has lived in Austin. She won't give me the exact number of years, but she says about 60 years here in Austin.
No, in 1960s.
I knew I would get a straight answer out of her. if I fuzzed a little bit. Anyway, she lives in East Austin. She has, of course, seen an incredible change with the city. She was here when, of course, the city was considered a town. Now it's a metropolitan city, so we'd love to hear what you'd like to ask.
Well, I wanted to say something first. In 1968, we built the upper deck of I-35, and because of the hemisphere, so we were thinking of San Antonio, and it made a big difference. It still does in the evenings if you know where to enter to get to the upper deck, which I do quite often to alleviate some of the traffic. When he was mentioning the traffic was only morning and evening, that's not true. It's nearly all day long. You go to I-35 at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's still stop and start. But I was looking at the HOV lane, since we usually have 3 lanes and have 1 lane that's an HOV lane, would alleviate some of the traffic. I know we have a lot of places where the cars are able to enter, so I think they were talking about that. But then, after you kind of went over that, I was thinking about, to our Capital Metro, Miss Watson over here, is how do you expect seniors that can no longer drive be able to get around in the city with all the traffic easily?
All right, that's her question. Thank you so much. I'll give Ms. Watson a chance to answer that question. Thank you, Marguerite. Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. We are working with the City of Austin to increase connectivity and access to bus stops, especially for seniors and people with disabilities. Our goal is to make every bus stop accessible. We have low-floor buses with easy access for people who have disabilities or are older and have a more difficult time getting around. And then, of course, we have our Metro Access service that caters specifically to people who are not able to ride the fixed route bus. So we offer a variety of services to people who are older or have problems getting around.
Will you discount fares?
We do have that. We offer half fares for people who are older and have disabilities.
Thank you very much. Go back up to
while you're there, I think we were talking about, we've been talking about I-35, of course, and Campo. I know we mentioned some of the regional work, but Maureen McCoy is down there as well from Campo, and I just thought, from your perspective, how do we fix I-35 as a region? There has to be some trouble in getting all the pieces to work together.
I think someone mentioned it earlier, and it's the partnerships that I think the region is known for, and we're always developing those a little bit more. And there is no silver bullet, but I think by the City of Austin's process, the Texas Transportation Institute, when they're looking at the congested corridors, Williamson County has an initiative to try to look at congestion along 35. It's not one single solution, it's the partnerships.
And Rob, you are with the city, and we've been dealing with a situation in Austin for many, many years where some believe that if you don't build it, they won't come. And we're living with the effects of that right now. Tell us the perspective from your vantage point at the city.
Well, you know, when I think about congestion, I think of it as a symptom of underlying problems, not the problem in of itself. It's certainly a pesky issue that we have to deal with, but it's a symptom of underlying problems. And our success in Austin is what is driving the demand to get to our major transportation destinations, and people don't have a lot of alternatives right now. You know, I don't think Forbes magazine, when they listed us as the #1 boomtown for the next 10 years, took a look at the traffic situation. They took a look at the business models going on, the employment that's busting out of its seams right now, the dynamic place, the music capital of the world. Those are the things they were evaluating, not the traffic congestions, when they labeled us the #1 boomtown. So people are moving here regardless of what we can do. I've been seeing a lot of comments online, why don't we just shut the doors, you know? We can't. You know, they're coming. And so we need to figure out ways to meet that demand that allows us to maintain our current successful atmosphere and environment here.
Have you heard of the My35 study? Anyone? Some have not. What's the status? John of that right now. I think part of my question is this. We hear about studies. The city's doing a study on I-35. TxDOT's doing a study on I-35. And it gets, frankly, a little confusing to everyone of all these studies being done and what's actually happening. What can you tell us is specifically happening that will result from this I-35 study?
The My35 study, as I mentioned earlier, is a statewide initiative from Laredo, Texas to Gainesville, Texas, north of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And it included representatives along the entire corridor. And it talked about what we could do to plan for today and for the future along I-35. In Central Texas, most of the work being done today involves projects like the interchange at US 290 or Ben White and I-35, and the operational improvements that the City of Austin study is looking at, as well as the expansion of the corridor north of Austin between Austin and the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. For the long term, it came up with solutions like moving Interstate 35 over Interstate Highway 130. So the current status of that My35 study is that the group has finished their work. In fact, tomorrow at the Texas Transportation Commission, they will be presenting it to the commission as their finished product for this initial effort. And at that point, we will be sharing it with the communities around the state that are impacted by Interstate 35, Campo as an example, and giving that information to them and beginning a dialogue with those communities and those metropolitan planning organizations about what improvements can be made out of this report and what funding can be cobbled together to make those a reality in the midterm to perhaps long term. Because, as Maureen mentioned, there is no silver bullet. And quite frankly, these major transportation investments that will address some of the issues that have been talked about tonight are things that take three primary things to occur. Proper planning that engages the community and gets buy-in from everyone, coming up with feasible solutions that can be built, and then the third piece is the funding component. And having all three of those completed is unfortunately not something that happens in a short period of time, but oftentimes takes a long period of time to put together.
I might also mention that something that is being done now that I think will make a difference is they are in the process through a private organization building segments 5 and 6 of State Highway 130, which will connect it with down to I-10. And I think once truck traffic can get on at I-10 as opposed to having to come up I-35 and go east on 45 and then just go north for 17 miles, that when they can get on to State Highway 130 at I-10 and travel that full distance to north of Austin, that will actually start to appeal to some of the longer distance through traffic. So I think that is something that in State Highway 130 segments 5 and 6 are going to be done next year. Is that right?
That's correct. Their scheduled opening date is in November of 2012.
For all of our sakes, I hope it does make a difference to get some of the trucks off I-35.